It's Nancy Cavey. Welcome to this week's episode of Winning Isn't Easy. We have a special guest today, and our guest is well known to the audience. She's spoken to us before about family law matters, but Kristina Feher is also a bankruptcy lawyer. And the reason I wanted her to speak today is that we do have clients in our long-term disability cases who own businesses. And the question ultimately becomes, well, what happens to my disability insurance case, my benefits, if I file for bankruptcy? When should I file for bankruptcy? And all sorts of questions that Kristina is the expert on. In addition to practicing bankruptcy law, she also is an instructor at the St. Pete College Paralegal Program, where she met my now associate, Christy Monaco. And so she's been an educator not only of paralegals, but she's an educator today for us to learn more about the wonderful world of bankruptcy and business. So welcome, Kristina.
Thank you, Nancy. So great to be here, hoping to help some people get some questions answered today.
Great. As I said, we have issues with clients who own businesses and who wonder what they should be doing with their disability insurance and the filing of bankruptcy. So let's start out with the obvious question. What is a business bankruptcy? Because I know there are different types of bankruptcy. So educate us, please.
Sure. So a business bankruptcy is really the last resort when your business fails. And a business bankruptcy really helps address the debt problems that the business has incurred. And so when we talk about business bankruptcies, there's really only two types of business bankruptcies. The first is the Chapter 7. That's when a business liquidates, it shuts down. A lot of times what we see in the media is you go to a store, the doors are locked, the lights are off, there's a sign in the window. That's the worst case scenario. But what that Chapter 7 does is very much the same thing. You shut the business down and you stop operating. On the flip side, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy is when your debt has just really been holding your business back or being the anchor that prevents it from moving forward. So a Chapter 11 allows you to reorganize your debt, still keep operating, and then come out of the bankruptcy a much leaner, healthier version of the business without debt.
So generally, I will see two different scenarios here. The first is, for example, a physician who has become disabled. They have debt associated with their practice, and they potentially want to sell their business, but potentially have to deal with this debt either before bankruptcy or have that debt sold as part of the business. What advice do you give generally in that sort of situation where you have a business owner who is disabled and doesn't necessarily want to keep on practicing? And I'm going to twist that because the next question is going to be, they do want to keep on practicing. They want to collect their residual disability benefits, but they've got this debt issue that's just hanging over their heads and, making their disability worse.
Sure. So the first question, is really, can they keep operating the business? And that really becomes the tough question of, are they working to live or living to work? If you're disabled, we really want to make sure you're thinking about your health, the best decision for you. And so when you try to sell a business, maybe it's a little debt heavy, that's not going to be very appealing to a potential buyer. And so depending on what the books look like, assets versus debt, it might not be feasible to actually sell that business. And so if you can't, then the best thing would be to just file the Chapter 7, let the court liquidate all of those assets, all of those debts, and just allow you to focus on your health.
So I'm going to give you a little twist here, if you will, on that answer. What happens to their disability insurance policy? I'll tell you what I think. You can tell me what you think as the bankruptcy attorney. So they have a disability insurance policy, number one, but they're not disabled, and they're going to liquidate their business. And then question two is going to be, they have a disability policy and they're disabled. What happens in both situations if you're doing an 11? What happens to the policy?
Sure. So in a Chapter 11, the business is continuing operating. So maybe you have found a potential buyer who's going to come in, but we're getting rid of the debt in a Chapter 11. And so in that case, as long as the insurance policy continues, if you're the disabled employee or the disabled business owner who's collecting, that's going to continue. What we see, though, sometimes in Chapter 11s is that we cut costs to pay off some debt.
Right.
And oftentimes things like disability policies and life insurance policies and pensions are the first things on the chopping block to help that business get more lean. So if all the business has is the policy and no one's collecting on it, that's going to be an easy asset to chop, which could leave the business owner who's an employee without a viable insurance option.
Right. And obviously, from my perspective as a disability attorney, that is really a trap, because what will happen is if the person has any type of pre-existing conditions for which they're getting treatment and they try to go out into the market to get another disability policy, what we find, of course, is that the disability company will be happy to collect the premium and write the policy, but they'll issue a rider excluding whatever those pre-existing conditions might be. Would you
agree? So then is it really a good option? And so as we're going through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy and we're looking at those cost saving measures of what to cut, it's important as a business owner to say to your bankruptcy attorney, I have these pre-existing conditions, which may affect my ability to get good coverage going forward. So this, whether it's a health insurance, a disability policy, life insurance policy, it's going to be very important to let your bankruptcy attorney know about that.
Great. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you that same question in the form of a Chapter 7.